How's it going, everyone? After the Packers used their first second round pick on picking a tight end, they decided to trade down with first the Lions, who ended up picking safety Brian Branch, who was rated the best safety in class, but it's more of a slot corner type of defensive back, so it's kind of fine that we passed on him. Then also traded down further with the Bucks, and at pick 50 picked a wide receiver in Jayden Reed out of Michigan State. And this receiver is this guy was not on my radar at all. So he is 5'11" and 187 pounds. That is not the typical big body receiver. That's not a big body receiver at all. Then backers don't go for. He ran a 4.45 40-yard time and a 1.53 10-yard split. So he's decently quick and has a RAS score of 6.73. The Packers picked this guy. There were other big body receivers on the... Okay, so yes, the Packers picked Jayden Reed. This is definitely against the normal for them. So, despite this receiver not checking any of the boxes and being the kind of receiver the Packers pick, there are some things when you start diving a little bit more in, you can kind of understand why they could have picked him. So, he is a receiver that plays a lot bigger than his size. He's 5'11", but when you watch his highlight tape and watch him play, he goes up for the ball. He definitely challenges the bigger cornerbacks in the league at the collegiate level. And he definitely plays a lot bigger than his size. He is not afraid to go up and go for contested catches, and he's actually really good at that. He does a good job at tracking the ball. He has very good hands and body control to whip his body around and make those difficult catches. And he's kind of versatile. So he can play outside, he can play slot, and he can also play the kick return and punt return, and he's multifaceted. So I can see why the Packers would pick him. So when kind of looking at where he played in college, so in the 2020 season, he played 197 snaps in the slot with 60 snaps out wide. Then in 2021, different change of pace, he played 65 snaps in the slot with 345 snaps out wide. And in the 2022 season, had 84 snaps in the slot and 291 snaps out wide. And as you can see, his 2021 season is his most productive. He had 59 catches for 1,026 yards. And in 2022, last year, he only had 55 receptions for 636 yards. Almost the same amount of catches, but definitely a drastic change in yards. And his touchdown total is 5 for last year compared to in 2021, where he had 10 touchdowns. So obviously, he had a worse statistical season last year compared to 2021. And it's really not his fault. When you look at what his situation was, he was actually typically pretty open a lot of times. It's just the passing attack for Michigan State was terrible in 2022. He did everything he was tasked to do and could do for the team, and they just couldn't get him the ball a lot of times. Like, their passing attack dropped last year compared to 2021. They didn't have enough time in the pocket to throw the ball deeper. Their average yard dropped a whole yard. So there were a lot of reasons of why his stats, they're not as good as compared to 21. But him as a player, you saw him constantly get open, making very difficult contested catches. And there's a lot to like about the player. And when you start looking at it a little bit more in detail, it's kind of making a little bit more sense in understanding of why we went with Jayden Reed, despite there being other receivers on the draft board. And I was thinking we might pick Rashee Rice, but he's probably a later on pick in maybe the 5th or 4th round. And I feel like the Packers will still pick him up because I feel like he's the type of player the Packers like. And they did bring him in for an in-draft visit, despite so far in-draft visits have meant nothing in this draft for the Packers. Or they have, and that's why we didn't get Darnell Washington. But on paper, it doesn't look that great. It's not a receiver the Packers pick. Diving a little bit more in, I can see where he could fit with his offense. He can play the slot. We don't have Randall Cobb. We were thinking maybe Samori Toure would play the slot, but this guy has slot experience. He's very versatile into where he doesn't have to exactly play the slot. He can kick out wide, and maybe they'll put Christian Watson or Dobbs in the slot and mix things up. And that allows more flexibility into our offensive scheme, especially with how we're drafting. We have a lot of speed now on this offense and a lot of versatility, which is something that's kind of been lacking the past few years, which is kind of also ironic that we're getting this when Rodgers is now gone and Jordan Love's here, but we're getting help for Jordan Love. So he's very versatile. He's got decent speed. He's a very good route runner. He's got very good hands. He plays bigger than he actually is. And I, for one, am, as with all the players we've drafted thus far, I'm very excited to see what he possibly does, especially starting in training camp, where he could play, what type of flashes he's going to show. Are we going to hear a lot about him in training camp? Like, wow, this guy is a really good route runner and he's making all the tough catches and he does all the right things. That's me hoping. But I wouldn't be shocked based off how his highlight and how he looked like he played in college if that somehow translated over. So it's going to be interesting how he could fit and how I think he would fit with the Packers and how he'll actually fit with the Packers. He's going to have to practice, though, on A. He did have a few drops in college. He only dropped 5 balls last year, but still he had a few drops. And they weren't like the contested catch drops. They were more the focus catch drops. I'm not sure why there seems to be so many focus catch problems. Probably because lack of focus, ironically, but it is what it is. So he's going to have to button that up a little bit. And he mostly struggled in press coverage. And so he's probably going to mainly be a slot guy, especially with his size and with our offense and how it is. He's probably mainly going to be a slot guy. He did struggle against press coverage, and that's due to his size. In the slot, he might not have to worry about that too much, but he's going to have to work on that because if the MO is just get hands on him and he's done, you're not going to last in this league. So he's going to have to work on that. But otherwise, he has a good skill set. He's got a bit to like to where I'm actually positive about this pick despite other receivers still being available. And at the end of the day, we are getting Jordan Love help. We're getting faster on offense, and that's always a good thing with our team because we were lacking speed for a very long time, it felt like, on offense, especially after Jordy Nelson left. After Jordy, speed just kept diminishing. Like, yeah, Devontae Adams is awesome, but he wasn't the burner. But he was a very good release guy, but we needed a burner to stretch this field. And so far, the MO, what the goal is in this draft has been kind of obvious. Get some speed on this offense, and I am all for it. But let me know what you think down in the comments. If you liked the video, hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and as always, go Pack Go.